So now we've talked about motivations. Now to start to set the basic foundation before we run through them. So what is the big picture? The big picture in hematopathology, I think, is the idea of hematopoiesis, the development of blood components. Now, what is in blood? We've got red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets, and then all the other fluid components that we're not concerned about in this particular lecture. Really, for hematopathology, we do deal with coagulation, with hematology, but this actually isn't going to deal with that because we're just dealing with the blood cancers. You don't have cancers of the liquid part. You have cancers of the cellular component. And so those cellular components have to come from somewhere. So where do they come from? They all initially start from a hematopoietic stem cell up at the top. In this figure, it calls it a multipotential hematopoietic stem cell. This really early stem cell can multiply, replenish itself, and it can also differentiate or become more specific, become more specified, get a more specific job. There are two main branches to this differentiation, myeloid and lymphoid. The myeloid side includes all the white blood cells, or the leukocytes, which eventually will turn to basophils, neutrophils, eosinophils, monocytes. Also, at this highest level of the common myeloid progenitor, if we call it, just for clarity's sake, a common big M myeloid progenitor, that also is a progenitor to the red blood cells. So in the broadest sense, red blood cells are of a myeloid-ish lineage. Now, this changes when we start to get to actual evaluation of the bone marrow and that sort of stuff. We think of it as a separate erythroid lineage, but they both have the same earliest precursor. This is important to some of the chronic myeloid leukemias that we'll get to later, to understand that red cells and the white blood cells all have a common myeloid progenitor. This common myeloid progenitor also gives rise to megakaryocytes, which produce platelets. Megakaryocytes live in the bone marrow, and then they send out the platelets into the peripheral blood, and usually it's the platelets that you see in the peripheral blood. With some diseases, you can actually see a circulating megakaryocyte, and that's exciting for the hematologists and hematopathologists, but you're not usually supposed to see them there. So all of those are part of one main branch, the myeloid branch. The other branch is the lymphoid branch, and the common lymphoid progenitor can give rise to the different types of lymphocytes, B cells, T cells, and NK cells, or natural killer cells. B cells can then further differentiate into plasma cells. Some of them do, but some of them don't. And so it's not guaranteed that a B cell is going to eventually turn into a plasma cell. So there is, again, this big picture of differentiation, increased specification from the earliest precursor down to the most mature and differentiated blood cell components. And you'll see the platelets, white blood cells in the peripheral blood, and the lymphocytes. You'll see some of those in the peripheral blood, but you'll mostly see those in the lymph node. You also see them in the spleen and the thymus, but I'm going to focus on the lymph node for this particular presentation.